Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me right now. I'm gonna wait for some confirmation in the comments, but I have a lot of questions to get through today. I went to my patrons on Patreon and some of my friends just to see, if anybody had any questions to sort of add to the list for things that I can get to when I do these videos. So I have a lot to get through today, which is awesome. They really came through for me there. And hopefully, I'll have a lot to answer for the next several videos that I do for this channel. So that's awesome. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm gonna get started here in just a second. Try to give the video like a minute or so to get shared, and hopefully we can get some more viewers in here. Just gonna be doing a quick drawing of Roxy in like a summer outfit today. So nothing fancy, but maybe it's gonna be something that I'll make into a poster or postcard for my patrons or share on the Facebook page and what have you. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the drawing here, and I will start answering some of these questions, and hopefully we'll get some more views going as the video goes on. I've kind of front-loaded some of them that I just wanted to answer, but there's like several to get through, and they're in several different categories, so I'm gonna just kind of pick and choose a few from my friends and patrons. And if those of you watching have any questions that you want to ask, you can leave them in the comments to this video, and I'll try to get around to those too. With that said, I'm just gonna get started in here. I already have the sort of quote-unquote pencil drawing down. It's very messy, as you can see, but it just sort of shows me basically what shape to make her face and everything. Like it just lays out her basic like body position, the curve of her arm, the way her legs are going to be positioned. So I have a framework to go on, and I'm not just inking over nothing. So one question I got from a Facebook follower was, do you usually start with the eyes when drawing a face? I used to. That's basically how I used to draw faces for you know, in any purpose. Like if I was drawing realistically, or if I was doing just like some kind of cartoony thing, I would always start with the eyes. But I find that my natural tendency is to make the eyes way too big. Um, so I kind of start with a framework now, where I kind of map out like Roxy is a fairly cartoonish character with really big eyes, um, but it's nice to like have them placed in a certain way and to have like a plan before I just start drawing facial features, and it leads to more consistent artwork, I find. So not anymore. I do the basic shape of the head. I usually start with a circle and just kind of build the rest of her around that. I've got a bit of a chin issue going on here with her right now. I swear I'm still not used to this tablet. Hmm. Okay, next question is from one of my friends and patrons. Is there a genre that you hate to draw, like superhero, anime, period pieces, etc.? No. There are genres that I'm less comfortable with, um, and I think that every artist has their comfort zone, and you know it can be scary to step outside of that. But overall, I would say I'm someone who welcomes challenges in that way. The only style of art that I actively hate to do is anything where I have to imitate the style of another artist. Uh, like I did work for an animation studio for a while, and like they're a great studio. I don't want to like call them out or anything, but the projects I was working on were generally projects that like another artist had started and dropped. And so I would have to kind of tailor my work to be not my own style and not like an established style, but specifically the style of another artist on my team. And that is way harder for me for some reason than like trying to draw anime or like something else that has like an established look. Um, and it just like it feels unnatural when you're doing it. So it's really challenging to kind of keep that consistent and feel like you're actually coming through in the design, like your style is coming through in your work. And that's always been fairly important to me. So that's the only kind of work that I actively dislike doing in terms of art. Okay, next question. What is your wake up routine and bedtime routine? Um, so I'm kind of allergic to routine. Like it's hard for me to create and maintain any kind of consistent routine in my life. Like there are certain things that I will do every day, but I kind of do them in any order. Um, the only like wake up routine I would say I actually have is I will always have a cup of black coffee in the morning. Uh, Pretty much always, unless like horror of horrors, I'm out of coffee, in which case I'll make tea. But I never quite feel like my morning is complete without, a cup of coffee. Whether I have it like right first thing and like just get straight into work after that, or if I like actually take time to brew it and like sit on my porch and gather my thoughts, like coffee is the one consistency in my mornings. Bedtime routines, I have to be a little better about those because if I don't have them, I take forever to get to sleep. So usually I will like wind down, talk to my boyfriend for a bit, and then like put on a YouTube video or anything that's like sort of relaxing and like gets me in a space where I can sleep. ASMR videos can be really helpful for that, but I mean, so can you know documentaries or just like anything that's I don't want to say boring, but like what's the good version of boring? Basically that kind of thing. Next question is, what's your favorite song to sing along with in the car? Ooh, that's a really tough choice because I actually do sing quite a bit. I'm a big shower singer. My boyfriend will attest to that. Usually I sing either like show tunes or uh, something that's like vaguely folksy. I like folk and country because you can kind of make your voice like really big and I don't know, at least in my head it sounds like that. I'm sure like if someone were listening to me it'd be like, no. But like I don't know, it's still fun when you're driving or doing other stuff to just kind of belt songs out. Mm, okay, here's a question from one of my friends. It's kind of funny. Who is your favorite founding father? Follow-up question, why is it Alexander Hamilton? um, I can't really say that mine is Alexander Hamilton, actually, because I don't feel like I can claim someone as my favorite founding father when the majority of what I know about him is from the musical. um, and like it was a very good musical, obviously. I'm not gonna drag Hamilton on here. But I don't know. That's a kind of tough question. Like, there's no non-problematic founding father by current day standards. So, like, it's hard to pick one without adding like a bunch of addendums to it. Like, well, I know he was a racist, or I know he owned slaves. If you had asked me like 5 years ago, I probably would have said Jefferson. Um, Although now I'm probably gonna answer either John Adams or Ben Franklin. Um, I don't know if Ben Franklin counts because he was never a president, but I don't know. His writings are entertaining, and I think I probably like if I met them all in person, Franklin is probably the one that I would get along with the most. I don't know if there are any. Let's see. Here's another question. This is about just like art and learning art and the philosophy of art. I have a few in that category that I'm really excited to get around to, either in this video or in subsequent videos. This one says, is ability something that you have to be born with, or can it be learned? That's a really tough question. And I don't think it's one that I, can give like a definite answer to. I think that I think more people could learn art than think they could learn art. Like I've known a lot of people who like, look at drawings that I've done or that other people have done and just immediately their reaction is I could never do that. Um, but like so much of art is about practice and repetition and just finding your comfort zone. That I really do think that it can be learned by most people. And like, I'm not saying everybody would have like an equal ability ceiling, if that makes any sense. Like, I think most people reach a point past which like it's hard to improve. Um, but I think everyone to some extent can learn to draw, learn to paint, learn to express creatively. And I think it's something that more people should look into. And I think it's something that we should like let kids especially explore. I think like even if it's not something that is going to be super helpful for career stuff, it still has value, and especially when you're young, just you need every possible tool that can help you express yourself, and sometimes drawing is the best option for that. I remember when I was a kid, like I could express things in art that I never could have, verbally, even with the people I trusted most in the world. So I think it's like one of those very basic human things to want to make and look at images and use them to express ideas. So it's much more of a universal thing than some people seem to think. Let's see. Next question. I'm gonna kind of go through these at random because they're categorized by like art theory and like pop culture, and I don't want to just do a bunch of one category in a row. So let's see. What is your favorite Marvel character, and which is your favorite to draw? Ooh. Um, this is a tricky one because I didn't really read a lot of like superhero comics. Uh, I've never been like that. That's never been my fandom or my link with the comics world. I have read more in recent years. I'm more of a DC reader right now. But with Marvel, I did always like the X-Men. I think I'm one of like 12 people that actually still enjoys the first and second X-Men movies from the early 2000s. Um, Favorite one to draw is probably, it's got to be Nightcrawler. Uh, I mean, anything that's like vaguely demon themed is gonna be something that I'm into. Um, and I just like him as a character, like personality wise. I think he's one of my favorites. Uh, let's see. Same question for DC. Um, I think in terms of just like which one I identify with the most, I really like Raven. But I've read like the Brian Michael Bendis Superman comics from recent years have been like really really good, and it's gotten me into a character that historically I wasn't always into. So like which characters are my favorite is very dependent on who's writing them, and which characters are my favorite to draw. That's kind of about comfort zone too. Like I would say Wonder Woman is probably more in my comfort zone than like uh, you know any like big muscular dudes because I just have spent a lot more time drawing women. Um, yeah, it's very situational for me with superheroes. There's like a version of every superhero that I like, but it's not always the comics version. Hmm. Let's see. How did you come up with Roxy? Uh, well, she's sort of I came up with her when I was working out at a coffee shop back like in 2016 or 2017, and she's just kind of like a character that's loosely based on the part of me that is very socially anxious and kind of a shut-in. I was reading a lot of other humorous webcomics at the time. Sarah Scribbles was a big one, but there was also like Shen Comics and oh, what's her name? I think it's Katana Comics. I'll have to look it up and be sure for next time. But there was just like this theme in a lot of them that was like introverts versus the world a little bit, and that really spoke to me at the time, and I kind of wanted to see if I could do it. I was recently like I had left my job at Half Price Books, and I was trying to figure out uh, my career as a freelance illustrator. And this was just like I didn't have a lot of projects lined up, so this was something that I could work on. And I'd always wanted to have like something that I could just publish independently and like share on social media without really having to, go through publishers or anything like that. And it was as good a time as any. So I kind of just tried it once and had a pretty good response. And I guess the rest is history. I've been posting pretty much every week since. Um, it's really cool that it's gained as much of a following as it has. It's crazy to me. Let's see. What's my next question? Do you do commission projects? I do, actually. I still do freelance in addition to my comic. And anybody who's looking for freelance, you can reach me via my email, which I think is in the About section of this page, or you can just message me. I get a lot of requests for work via Facebook Messenger and Reddit and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, don't be shy. If you guys ever want to work together on a project, or if you're like looking for just to get like your D&D character drawn or stuff like that, reach out to me. And if I have the time, I would love to work with you guys. Let's see. What kind of art? What kind of artsing did you go to school for? I went to CCAD, which is an art school in my hometown, Columbus, Ohio. And I didn't really know specifically what I wanted to do when I went. Um, I just knew I was good at drawing, and it was one of the few things that I was like better than most of my peers at. So like it just seemed like if I was going to have a career in something, it was going to be related to that. So I ended up majoring in illustration, which is what most people were doing back then. Like I think there were fewer majors when I went there than there are now. Like now you can major in like animation, comics, and stuff like that. And those programs existed when I was there, but they were much more in their infant stages. Um, so it's gotten I mean, it's great that it's gotten so much more diverse and focused on like different things that like I would say are more modern career paths. When I went, there was a lot of like teachers who focused on traditional media and like hated anime, didn't really know about comics, and it was just like it was hard to get into that from an academic standpoint, if that was what you were looking to do. Like they kind of gave you the impression that it's great if you want to make that your hobby, but nobody really knew like how to turn that into a career. And not saying that it's easy. Like I don't know if anybody knows that now. Like if there's a definite path for this kind of thing, but it's definitely more of a focus than it was when I was in school. Oh, uh, I have a friend in the comments, Kenneth Smith, saying your custom work is amazing. Thank you so much. I have actually worked with him a couple times. He has a D&D group that likes to commission portraits of their characters, and it's really fun to work on. That's one of my sort of illustrator specialties when I'm not doing this, is like fantasy art. So I love doing commissioned D&D portraits. Let's see. I'm gonna hop to an artistic question. What do you do when you have writer's block? And is illustrator's block a thing? Illustrator's block is definitely a thing. It's similar to writer's block. Like sometimes you sit down and you stare at a blank piece of paper and you just hope that the ideas will come, and they just don't. Often the more you force it, the less likely it is to happen. Like art is one of those things, like writing, I would say, where if you're forcing it, your mind sort of knows it and rebels against you and won't really do what you want it to do. Um, what I do when I have writer's block or illustrator's block, I would say, is either switch to another project or just open my sketchbook and start doing something that's like unrelated to any of the work that I've been doing. Because usually for me, it's somewhat related to burnout, and I think that's something that happens to a lot of people. Even if it's something you love, like working on the same project week after week can start to wear on you after a while. So just like keeping a personal sketchbook and being able to make some time for that, you know, whenever you need. It doesn't have to be every day, but I think it's a good habit to get into if you can draw every day. Um, but just like making time for yourself to like express what's actually like the types of ideas that are actually coming to you right now in this moment, and that aren't really related to whatever commercial project you're working on or whatever you've been doing lately that's sort of lost its steam for you. Um, and I think that's something that happens for everybody too. So like, don't be afraid if you feel a little bit of creative block, because the inspiration and the desire to do this kind of work is something that by its nature waxes and wanes a lot. So sometimes it's important to be willing to step away and accept that it's just not coming to you today, and like those are really good days to focus on other things, like getting your chores done or doing your social media or like, and there are a lot of other aspects of working creatively that don't necessarily involve drawing. So hmm. Ooh, so Lee Newsel in the comments here, that's my boyfriend, is asking, have you ever met any of your favorite art authors or artists? Um, you know, I haven't actually met that many like famous people. Uh, I would really like to meet, I mean, when conventions are a thing again, Kate Beaton or Sarah Anderson, um, really anybody who's in the like humorous comics world, just because I feel like there aren't that many opportunities to meet people in that specific comics field. Um, I did get to go see Brian Michael Bendis speak at CCAD a couple of years ago, and that was one of the better experiences that I've had. I didn't know it was going to happen until the day of, and I like messaged my friends, freaked out, like, "Oh my God, guys, Brian Michael Bendis is going to be here!" So like my boyfriend like got out of work early, and like we just scrambled to get down to this auditorium where he was answering questions, and we got in there like right under the wire. But he was one of the better like Q&A and like writer just talks that I think I've ever been to. um, I've gotten to see Daniel Clowes speak before, and he is one of my like all-time favorites. He was like the first comic that I ever read, really, like that wasn't like meant for kids. Like I think I got it when I was in 8th grade, and it was so different from anything else that I had ever looked at. This was like Ghost World and a compilation of like 20th century 8 ball, and that was like very formative for me. It's definitely darker than the work I do, at least with Roxy, but it was one of my favorite things for a really long time. It's boba, the thing that she's drinking. I put like a dome over it. I'm not sure why. Boba don't have that. Nobody puts whipped cream on bubble tea. I'm gonna actually add in the bubbles. I think subconsciously, like I'm craving bubble tea right now because it's been so long since I was able to go to a bubble tea place. Let me find another question here real quick. Hmm. When you first started doing art, what kind of art did you do? Well, there's like a couple different answers to that question. Like there was the art that I did when I was a little kid, when I was like, in second, 3rd grade, and I was like trying to make storybooks for my parents to read and stuff like that. Um, like I would do sort of pseudo comics, and yeah. But when I was actually starting to get serious about art, it would have been like in middle school, high school, and I tried to like that was the first time I actually like applied myself and tried to improve my drawing skills in a real way. Um, and I mostly just I started by copying a lot of like anime style stuff. Um, but later I kind of developed my own style that was like based loosely on the anime stuff, but also on Amy Brown. Like I looked at a lot of fantasy art and like especially related to like fairies and stuff like that. Um, so I sort of developed several different styles over time because I would also do cartooning and just like humorous stuff. It was just like there was a lot of exploration at that time. So and mostly like where I would draw is like in the margins of my notebooks in ballpoint pen. Ballpoint pen was actually like my favorite art medium for a while because of that, which is kind of problematic when you're going to art school because no teacher wants you to use ballpoint pen in your assignments. Um, so I had to kind of wean myself off of that and learn to use actual like professional art materials. But sometimes I still like if I'm really in a creative block, I will go find like a big pen and try and sketch with that, and it unlocks something for me. I don't know how or why, but it's a good tool to have for as a backup when I like really need something different. Let's see. I'm gonna hop to a Roxy question next. Um, hmm. If you could use Roxy to promote one product, what would you endorse? I feel like this is promoting bubble tea. I would probably want to do some kind of fashion brand with her. I think like I don't know if I've ever drawn her in the same outfit twice because I really like drawing different outfits for her. So I don't know, maybe like Killstar or something, like some kind of alternative gothic clothing brand. Hmm. You once drew a Super Roxy postcard. I did. This is from my Patreon. This is when I used to actually send out physical postcards instead of just digital ones via email. Let's see. What were her superpowers? What would Roxy's superpowers be? Feel like invisibility is probably the one that she would want the most. Like someone who's very prone to embarrassment and social anxiety. It would be high on her list of superpowers that she would want to have. Um, Other than that, um, don't know, maybe like empathic ability. I think she's a fairly like sensitive person, so that would fit with her personality well if I were to like in some strange alternate universe have like a Roxy superhero. Let's see. Hmm. Okay, so I have two questions from the same friend and patron here about teachers at CCAD. Like, did you have any teachers that made a huge impact on your journey? If so, how? And part two of this question is, did you have any teachers that were super dicks? Is the word that he uses? And the answer to both is yes. I would say some of my most like formative teachers were not necessarily art teachers. Like I think taking philosophy classes was really like eye-opening for me, and a lot of my like literature and writing teachers made a big impact on my journey too. There was one class that I took that was graphic novels as literature, and even though that wasn't an art class, it was one of the only ones where like comics were a focus. So that was like where I first read a lot of Alan Moore's work and kind of got into Marjan Satrapi, who wrote Persepolis, and just like kind of opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that I hadn't read before. Uh, were any of my teachers super dicks? Let's see. I don't want to name any names, so I won't be doing that. But we did have this one teacher who taught an illustration course, and he wasn't like unlikable. Like I really liked him, but he was very, I will say, cynical. And he was like, I think his philosophy was he was trying to prepare us for a really unforgiving market. So every time we would turn in a project, like an aspect of the critique would be, would you buy this? And the answer most often was no. So like it was never a class that I left feeling particularly hopeful about my work or my future in the industry. But yeah, like he wasn't a dick. He was just like very he was very forward when he had criticisms, and he didn't really care to like varnish his opinion if he didn't think you were doing something that was like worthy of a professional. So yeah, there was good and bad in among the teachers at the school that I went to, but mostly I had a good experience. Even with the teachers that were mean. Like sometimes you need that when you're studying something that's not going to be an easy field to pursue professionally. You can say it's like it's preparing you for the real world. Let's see. Hmm. What is your favorite artistic medium? Aside from digital, um, I really like charcoal. It's just like it feels earthy and like you get, the charcoal dust all over you. You feel like you're, doing something that is very like established and traditional. It's like it has a lot of history to it, and like it's a very expressive medium. Um, and I tend to prefer like drawing media to painting. I think I don't have a great sense of color. I prefer to work with black and white and then like find my way back to color or save it for last. Um, what part of the body do you struggle with the most in drawing? Uh, Probably feet. Well, not feet, but like specifically toes. I don't know. There's nothing that can't be remedied with like good photo reference, but as far as drawing from memory, I think like feet are probably the hardest thing for me. Whereas I can always kind of make it up with hands and faces, etc. Uh, how much do you care about body mechanic realism? That is a great question. And that's actually something that I care a lot about. Um, I think, like, even if you're drawing something that is very cartoonish and not at all realistic, like, it's important that it feel real in a certain way. Um, and I think I fall short of this sometimes in my comics, but like, it's important to like if you're going to establish your own set of rules that you stick to them in terms of like how your characters move and how they express like as far as facial expressions go. So I care a lot about that, and I try to be consistent, although I know I sometimes fail. Hmm. Let's see. Do you do any tricks like Liefeld to avoid drawing feet? These are still from the list of questions that I got from my Patreon and from my friends. Uh, the answer to this one is yeah, sort of. I'm actually going to erase this one out. I draw characters in shoes a lot, and I avoid like bare feet and sandals unless it like absolutely doesn't make sense not to have them. So like if my character is just like sitting at home in a situation where I would most likely be barefoot, I'll still draw her in socks sometimes just because like I don't know, I don't want to draw toes. Like they're easy to mess up. I feel like this is like an artist confessional for me. Um, let's see. How much do you hate Rob Liefeld? my friend is asking me this question. He's heard me go on my Rob Liefeld rant a few times before, and I don't like to badmouth other artists, so like I'm not gonna do that here. I think he's actually gotten pretty good in recent years. So I think it's that's tricky. Like so much of his older work is so not my style. like um like I said, I was never a huge fan of superhero comics to begin with, and like his style is very like all the lines are the same width and the anatomy is, what it is. So like if I had to pick out a least favorite artist, it would probably be Rob Liefeld from the 90s. Um, let's see. Don't want to throw any shade here, though, so I'm going to move on to the next question. How do you get yourself out of a creative funk? Um, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Like sometimes it's just a matter like there's not much you can actively do in some cases. Like it's just going to last as long as it lasts. Um, but things like, you know, a change of scenery, going to the park, if I haven't been in a while really helps me. Like just any place where I can kind of like be alone and be in nature uh, is like sort of helps me clear my head. Um, Sometimes doing things that you don't enjoy helps, like doing chores or like organizing your inbox. Like it just getting rid of background stressors is a hugely helpful thing sometimes for creativity because you're not always conscious of what is holding you back. And sometimes it's just like you have too much on your plate that you haven't gotten around to. And sometimes it's okay to like take a break from your creative projects and like just buckle in and get something done that you've been postponing. And sometimes that'll actually help you with your creative work. And also, it helps to get bored sometimes. Like your brain will instantly come up with ways to entertain you when you're bored. I think it's kind of it takes discipline because if you have a smartphone, especially, you basically always have the option to not be bored. Like you can fill every silence with Facebook or Twitter, and I do this a lot. But for creativity, sometimes it's really important to just like let yourself kind of have a moment of silence. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, that helps me get out of a creative funk sometimes. Other than that, like working on new projects can be really helpful, or even just like I said earlier, having a personal sketchbook, um, I think is a really awesome way to keep your creative juices flowing and keep from getting burnout, and sort of like tap into maybe a little bit of your subconscious. I don't mean to get so like woo on this channel, but like it can be helpful to just sort of have a space to do like stream of consciousness stuff. Like having a personal sketchbook can be about that as much as anything else. Um, you can come up with stuff when you like let inspiration flow that you don't necessarily know that you want to draw. Like sometimes you'll sit down to sketch and like you'll just think of something out of the blue and you're like you're almost surprised by it. Um, and that can be a great feeling and that can be a really good way to overcome like creative blocks in general and just like depression in some ways. I know that always helps me. Let's see. How big are your drawings before you digitize them? Well, I don't digitize them anymore, but when I did, I used standard like American comics sized paper, which is 11 by 17, and I would have like 4 or 5 panels. Well, let's say like between 3 and 6 panels, depending on how much of an elaborate joke I was trying to tell that week. So, like each panel is probably like 3 inches by 3 inches or so. So it's fairly small, but scan's kind of big. Like the scan will pick up more detail than you generally expect it to when you have it set right. So that is when I used to do that sort of thing. Now I just draw directly into Krita and with varying results. Like I think I've gotten better. I'm still learning though, and I'm getting my hands used to doing this kind of work, which is definitely not what I'm used to still. Sometimes I'll pick out like my regular sketchbook just so I can kind of go back to my comfort zone of like drawing by hand and I don't want to lose that skill. That looks like a nipple. There we go. Anybody else who draws ever run into that? Like you're working on a piece and like you're adding a pattern or something like that, and you're like, oh, I accidentally drew a penis or something. um, I end up like erasing those out usually, but it's like occasionally you don't intend to, but you draw some kind of embarrassing body part or another. I'm gonna fix this straw. This is a little messed up. This looks like a tree branch. Just gonna use a straight line tool next time. What am I looking for? Here it is. There we go. I'm almost done with this line drawing, and when I'm done with that, I'll probably end this video because it's already gone on for the better part of an hour. Let's see. I could probably make it to the hour mark, though. I don't know. There's no set limit that these things have to be, so you can always, you know, go on for a while longer. Depends on what you guys like. If an hour is too long, let me know in the comments. If you could always handle more, then like maybe you can do some longer ones. I'm gonna move on to the next question. Is it right to save art from the artist, a la George Lucas? Man, I feel like there's no way I can answer that definitively because, like, I it's hard not to take into account that sometimes the art that results from that is just better, or is just as good and like wouldn't exist if it hadn't been like, freed up in terms of creative control from the original person who created it. Like I was recently, I watched the show Watchmen on HBO. And it was amazing, and I really, really liked it. But it's always in the back of my mind that Alan Moore, who created the original series or created the original Watchmen comic, doesn't like film or TV adaptations of his work. That he kind of got screwed out of the creative rights to it by DC, and that kind of, I don't know, it flavors the experience for me, and it kind of makes it you know, less of a good feeling when I can enjoy, shows like that. Um, I think that in a world where like we are all kind of stuck in a capitalist system, it's important to make sure artists get compensated for their work. And I would never advocate for something that like wrests control from the artist unwillingly and, you know, just like kind of screws the creator out of the rights to their work. But in an ideal world, I think intellectual property law would probably be less stringent and strict than it is. And like things that right now could only exist as fan fiction would then be like, more broadly acceptable. I don't know. Nothing can be examined in a vacuum, so it's hard to answer these questions without getting into, the larger systems at play. I'm gonna move on to the next one. What is the best expression of the relationship between artist and critic? Um, it's tricky. There's a lot of really good like quotes on the subject, and like everybody likes that. I think it's a Theodore Roosevelt quote about, it's not the critic who counts. It's the creator who's. I'm not going to quote this directly because I don't remember the quote, but essentially it's saying that like the person who really matters is the creator who is putting their work out there, who is actually taking risks and offering themselves up to be judged, rather than the critic who just judges from safety, um, the work of other people. I don't know if I actually ascribe to that. I consume a lot of media criticism, and I think it's important as an aspect to art. Uh, like I think it's criticism is different from like just trashing something. Like it's important that we have a language and a framework in which to frame art and, you know artistic endeavors. So like I think critics are important. I don't think that they are, hiding behind any kind of socially acceptable wall where like the creative work that they do doesn't count. Um, that being said, I do think a lot of like internet criticism culture has been colored by algorithms and, what gets views and likes, which tends to be negative criticism. So like I think the badness of certain things is very overstated, um, and I think that overall that can be really discouraging, especially for young people who want to create. Um, like I don't know, if I were growing up right now, it'd be really scary to like try and become a creative person when everything is subject to the same like really brutal criticism. So I think there's a balance, that maybe things are out of balance right now in terms of criticism and culture. Um, and I think there are YouTubers that do it well. I think Lindsay Ellis is a good example of somebody who is generally like pretty balanced in her critiques of pop culture, and like there's a lot of takes that I've seen recently that are like, we were really hard on Twilight, or we were really hard on Titanic back in the day, and we were not right to do that. Like, this is actually a good thing, and was being criticized for not very intellectually honest or good reasons. So I'm glad that like some people are sort of re-examining the role of critics and, you know, revising some like common held cultural wisdom of certain things. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Okay, I'm gonna give this video like 10-ish more minutes. I'll probably call it quits at 1:30. I'm gonna go through. I think I've answered all the questions on this one list I have, so I'm gonna go back into my other list, which is like all from patrons and friends, and it has a bunch of material that I was hoping to get through in like upcoming videos. Sorry if the screen is frozen. Give me just a second. Okay. Hmm. Is there an artist or genre that you just totally hate and don't understand why it's a thing? I'm looking at you, Cubism. Um, I I think like there's a lot of modern and contemporary art that I just don't get. And it's not to say that it's bad. It's just like I don't know. Um, I think like a lot of modern art. I'm thinking of like Rothko specifically, but there are others like where it's like very abstracted. Um, I don't know. It's hard for me to get into that kind of work, other than like maybe Kandinsky or Jackson Pollock, where you can kind of look at their work and feel the emotion that's behind it. Um, Mostly, I like pre-Raphaelites and uh, Art Nouveau and just stuff that's like a lot more about like maximum visual imagery, if that makes any sense. Like uh, I tend to like figurative work, and I like stuff that follows like fantasy and literature themes, and sometimes I really like surrealism. Like I especially like Remedios Varo and some other women surrealists that I've been reading about recently. But yeah, like generally for me to get really into an art style, it has to depict something. It can be realistic or surrealistic, but like pure abstraction is very hard for me to get anything out of emotionally. Um, and that's just my opinion. Like, I don't think it's objectively a bad form of art or anything. Like, I'm sure there are people who are very into Rothko and others like him, and it's mostly just a matter of personal taste. Let's see. What is Roxy's favorite candy? Ooh, I'm just gonna give her my favorite candy and say that it is Junior Mints. I love me some Junior Mints. Anything mint chocolate. Actually, you just sort of inadvertently answered the question that was in my head of what color am I gonna make this bubble tea? I'm gonna make it green. Although it's probably not mint, it's probably winter melon if it's bubble tea. I think a mint bubble tea would be kind of gross. I'm almost done here. There we go. Yeah, this is just gonna be summer goth Roxy. Um, hmm. Is Roxy Team Edward or Team Jacob? I never read or watched Twilight, so I can't really answer that. I think she's probably Team Dracula or like Team Louis from Interview with the Vampire. It's more of like an old school kind of paranormal romance reader. Hmm. Hmm. So phase one, Roxy, was pretty much all standalone issues. Phase two brought us an ongoing story about the bookstore. Do you have plans for phase three? That's interesting because I kind of feel like I have reverted since COVID-19 started into phase one. Like I was thinking I would do more of an ongoing story this year, but I don't know. With me just writing week to week and with everything being either shut down or significantly reduced because of social distancing, it's just kind of hard for me right now to come up with, you know, how would I have her go on a date with someone or, things like that. Like what is work like for her right now? And I could get into that. It's just like I don't want to make the comic depressing just every single week, and I think it would be kind of a challenge to not make that depressing. Um, but I don't know. That's not to say that it won't happen again. Like that I won't bring in new characters or have an ongoing story to tell in the future. So I don't know. I would say stay tuned for that. I think it's just like for me personally, this has thrown such a wrench in my life and like the lives of everybody around me that it kind of threw me off course in terms of what I was planning to do and where I would have gone with the writing, before I would say March of this year. So I don't know what's in store for the future, but I don't want to just do weekly jokes forever. Even if that's all I end up doing for the next couple of months. So we'll see. I'm looking in the comments for questions again. How often do you feel the need to go back and change something after a few hours or even days after you're done? Um, you know, I think Roxy, like working on Roxy, has kind of trained me away from doing that to an extent. Like, because in my heart, like the temptation is to sort of never be finished with a project, because like there's always usually some way that you can improve it or like change it to fit a different style that's more exciting to you, or just add details and details and details to your project until it's just like you know glowing and perfect. But for this kind of work, for doing web comics, like if you have a weekly deadline, like you have to kind of be consistent with that, and that requires you to maybe put aside the desire to perfect every little thing. And then sometimes that means putting out work that like isn't the best thing you've ever drawn. And I think a lot of webtoon artists sort of struggle with feeling like, looking at my old work is horrible because it's all the colors are wrong, or the line work isn't what it should be. Like the fact is, you're working with a deadline, and that really puts a limit on you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Um, Sometimes the best mantra is done is better than perfect. Um, and I think that's something that a lot of creative people and just people in general really struggle um, to to remember. Um, but it really is like it's better to have a portfolio that you can show to people than have like one piece that you just worked on and worked on and gone over again and again to perfect, and it probably in the end won't be as perfect as you want it to be. Because I think perfectionism like is the tendency to never be satisfied, even when something is really good. So that's something to sort of struggle against as an artist. Okay, I'm going to end on this next question, which is a really profound one from one of my friends. All the question says is, what is best in life? And I think that is impossible for one person to answer for another person. I think everybody needs to find their own answer to what is best in life. I think most people would say it's family, it's friends, it's finding work that you feel is meaningful, that fulfills you, and that's one of the best things in life. But ultimately, it's going to be different for each person. So that's what I'll leave you with today. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to watch me draw, and hopefully I'll have a new video out later this week. And I'll have a bunch more questions to answer by then. If you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the comments here, or I'll post again next time that I have a video to set up. So you'll have opportunities to ask. But everybody, have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.